Good afternoon, producer Susan. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Jersee Joe. How was your holiday?
I did. We had some people over. I stayed off the highways. I watched all the people sitting in traffic. How about yourself?
Yeah, stayed local, did some yard work, went to celebrate Memorial Day in the birthplace of its creation,
Ballsburg, Pennsylvania?
Bollesburg, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. I got it. I understand. Yeah, there was I think I sent you some things. One of the radio talk show hosts has incorrectly said that it was Charleston, South Carolina. Don't get me wrong. In May of '65, the slaves in Charleston, South Carolina, the freed slaves in Charleston, South, began decorating the graves of the Union soldiers. But in Bollesburg, some women began doing it in October of 1964. So they
Yep.
actually were 6 months ahead of those freed slaves. So, but hey, it's good either way. It's just great. So, um, I'm going to try to got a ton of stuff. As usual, I had to figure out what I didn't want to talk about today. I had to delete three or four things. I'm going to try to get to more detail on that Temu shopping app that we couldn't get to last week. But anyway, for those who want to know when we're recording this, today is May 30th, the Tuesday after Memorial Day. It's the situation with Jerzee Joe. It's news and perspective you won't hear on TV. I was going to do a quote of the week from Aristotle on fools. But because of the debt ceiling legislation that was agreed to and is going to be voted on tomorrow, I'm going to repeat. I think I've done this one before. I'm going to repeat a quote of the week from Benjamin Franklin on poverty, and then I'm going to try to tie that quote into the quote work requirement that everybody got so upset about in the debt ceiling bill. You've heard about what people refer to as the work requirement.
Mhm.
All right. And I think the Benjamin Franklin bill quote is very relevant to that so-called work requirement. And the stupidest thing I've heard all week, I'm going to tell you how the Department of Homeland Security spent $350,000 of your tax dollars. Yeah, everybody says, oh, yeah, all the other developed countries have free universal health care. That's what we need, free universal health care. By the way, it's not free. Most of those countries that have it, I think we've covered, have enormous taxes. They've got 25% federal sales tax. They've got income tax rates that are three times what we pay here in the US. And I'm going to play a 3-minute video clip from a Canadian woman who explains why Canada's quote free universal health care system falls far short of delivering what was promised. We're going to tell you how much money the U.S. has to borrow every minute to fund this year's projected 1.6 trillion budget deficit. Even with these cost reductions and whatnot, the U.S. is still going to rack up 1.6 trillion deficit. In other words, we're going to spend 1.6 trillion more than we took in. In our Science Minute, we'll tell you why hybrid vehicles are 37 times better for the environment than 100% electric EV. We'll try to get to the dangers of the Temu shopping app that we've talked briefly about last week. And our taxpayer relief shot is from Houston, where a thug brings a stick to a gunfight with a store clerk who happens to be armed. How do you think that one turns out?
I'm gonna guess it was stopped by a good citizen with a gun.
Yeah, it doesn't turn out well for the guy with the stick. All right. So here's a quote by Benjamin Franklin. And I think I've done this one maybe 6 months ago, but I'm going to do it again. And if I did, I'm going to do it again and then tie it into the work requirement. So here's his quote, and this is from more than 200 years ago. And he said, I am all for doing good for the poor, but I think the best way of doing good for the poor is not making them easy in poverty, but leading or driving them out of it. I have observed that the more public provisions were made for the poor, the less they provided for themselves, and of course became poorer. And on the contrary, the less that was done for them, the more they did for themselves and became richer as a result. So, what do you think? Would you agree with Franklin's observations?
Absolutely.
So, how do you think that quote relates to the quote the work provision in the latest version of the debt ceiling bill that's going to be voted on tomorrow?
I think everybody, food stamps, I think is and other supplemental benefits for those who need it. I think all of those people have something they can offer the workforce, whether you have a disability or whatever your case may be. I have so many examples of people I personally know who have a disability and are contributing members of society.
Agreed. But by the way, the so-called work requirement, I'm going to tell you why it's not even a work requirement. First of all, only applies to able-bodied individuals between the ages of 18 and 50. So if you have some sort of disability, if you're on Social Security, there's no requirement to participate in any of these things I'm going to rattle off. So first of all, but I agree with you. I mean, I've worked side by side with people who have all sorts of disabilities. But first of all, this so-called work requirement only applies to, quote, able-bodied individuals between the ages of 18 and 50 who are also not caregivers, which means no mothers with children, nobody caring for an aged grandparent, nobody with a disabled spouse. So 18 to 50, able-bodied, and you're not a caregiver. Now, here are the three options. Number one, and initially they wanted to apply to both Medicaid, which is basically free medical care, and food stamps. Now it's just the compromise was just food stamps, which is technically SNAP, supplementary nutrition, supplementary nutrition. I'm forgetting what the AP stands for, but
Assistance program.
I'm sorry.
Supplemental nutrition assistance program,
SNAP benefits. So here are the three options, which are: number one, work at least 20 hours per week, not even full-time job, just part-time job, 20 hours a week; or two, enroll in a free state-sponsored job training program; or number three, perform 20 hours of volunteer community service work per week. So work 20 hours a week, enroll in free state-sponsored job training, or perform 20 hours of community service. So my question is, if you are in fact an able-bodied individual between the ages of 18 and 50 and you're not responsible for the care of another person, what reasonable and logical objection could you have for complying with one of those three options? Can you think of any?
Because you're lazy.
But I said reasonable and logical. Okay.
Wasn't it? And this goes back several years. I can't remember the state. And this, I guess, obviously applies to state benefits. Was it Maine or New Hampshire, Vermont, one of the northern New England states that did implement some sort of parameters for people to receive some benefits, that they had to, like you said, either have a part-time job or even volunteer work that would alleviate some burden on some.
I believe it was Maine, and they had some tremendous amount of people fall off the rolls. I think it was like 60%, and the vast majority of those actually found gainful full-time employment.
Yeah.
So it's not. So the way I look at it, well, they're going to be kicking people off food. No, the way I look at it, people would be opting. Nobody's getting kicked off. If you don't want to do one of those three things, you're basically opting out. If you prefer to sit home and watch The Price is Right, then you're opting out of SNAP benefits. Because I don't see anything. I don't know where you live, but I mean, you can, even if you live in some podunk little town, you can still do community service work 20 hours a week. So again, the bill is not kicking anybody off food stamps. Are basically, if they don't want to do one of those three options, then they're basically opting out. So did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think, people that are able, and even those with a disability that are able, because part of the ADA is making reasonable accommodations for your disability, is you can become a successful contributing member of society, whether that's for a paycheck or for volunteer work. And those volunteer positions usually help to alleviate the social system.
Right. And let's say that you're confined to a wheelchair, or you have a vision disability. You know how many people like that work in call centers?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, but again, but that requirement wouldn't even apply to somebody who was in a wheelchair. It wouldn't even apply to them, because
employers are required to make reasonable accommodations.
I agree. And as you know, and as I work next to dozens of people with disabilities, but those requirements don't even apply to people who could do that, because technically, under the definition of able-bodied, they wouldn't even qualify as able-bodied. So that's where that bill is. Hopefully it gets passed tomorrow, because today is Tuesday. The bill is up for a vote on Wednesday, so hopefully it will fly through the House. You'll probably have 5 or 6 Republicans who are just, got their panties in a wad. They won't vote for it, but I think you'll have the majority of Democrats will vote for it. So it should fly through both the House and the Senate. All right. You want to move on to the stupidest thing I've heard all week?
Let's do it. What was the stupidest thing you heard this week?
All right. So Department of Homeland Security, DHS, gave, and by the way, now remember, this is, Biden says we don't have $1 we can cut, right? You know, there's nothing we can cut. You know, every dollar we spend is, you know, helps people. Well, the Department of Homeland, now keep that quote in mind, that you know, we're already cut to the bone. The Department of Homeland Security gave a $352,000 grant titled Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant. Actually, they have a whole program. They have a whole program that gives you, this is just one. They have a Targeted Violence and Terrorism Prevention Grant program. And that program, one of the grants, just one that program gave, was $352,000 to the University of Dayton project as part of an effort to develop and implement modules on the risks and of protective factors for radicalization to violence related to media literacy and online critical thinking students. Was that a mouthful?
That's a mouthful. I was trying to follow what you were actually saying as you were saying it.
So let me read them. Let me read that again so people can, I'm going to say it slowly. As part of an effort to, quote, develop and implement modules on the risks of and protective factors for radicalization to violence related to media literacy and online critical thinking for students. I'm not even sure. I've got a college education. I'm not even sure I understand what that means.
I'm with you. I lost you after like the first 10 words.
Okay. So you know what that study produced?
What?
Have you seen the food pyramid?
Yes.
You know, okay.
Yeah.
They produced for 352. First of all, why are we giving more than $250,000 to a college to produce something? Do we really, first of all, did we really need some college to produce this for us? But anyway, so the college produced a pyramid graphic titled "The Pyramid of Far-Right Radicalization," that said, you know, here's how people get radicalized. So they've got all these different levels on the pyramid. This pyramid grouped organizations such as, I'm going to say them slowly. Now, by the way, at the top of the pyramid, you've got things like the American Nazi Party, the white supremacist groups as the Aryan Nation, and anti-government anarchist groups such as the Oath Keepers, right? They're right at the top of the period. You know who's about in the middle of the period? In the middle of the period, the middle of the pyramid?
Yeah, who's in the middle of the pyramid?
Prager University, the NRA, the Heritage Foundation. You've even got in here Fox News, the Republican National Convention. Can you imagine? You've got a Turning Point USA, Quillette, which is pretty much of a nonpartisan. I mean, here you got this quote, a pyramid of radicalizing media sources, and they're including the Republican National Convention, Fox News, the Heritage Foundation, Prager University, Breitbart, Turning Point USA, grouped in with people like the American Nazi Party. I mean, it just blows my mind.
And we paid for this.
And we paid $352,000. And remember, this is this is just one of many, because the Department of Homeland Security has an entire program that hands out grants like this. First of all, did we really need this pyramid to begin with? No. And in the terms of the quality of what they turned out, do you think this pyramid grouping the Fox News and Republican National Committee as part of a radicalization?
Yeah, I don't think you should be placing people like Fox News or most of the news outlets that are mainstream anyway, in the same group as those, you know,
American Nazi Party and Aryan.
Yeah, they don't belong in the same group.
They don't. All right. It just blows my mind. Hey,
that's your tax dollars at work, ladies and gentlemen.
Your tax dollars at work. All right. I want to play. Everybody says, oh, you know, look, all the other countries have, you know, free healthcare, you know, they call it free, but it's incredibly expensive. So it's really not free. But here's this Canadian woman explaining why you really don't want to mimic what Canada has done. Here we go. Whoop, hang on. It would help if I unmute this. Let me back it up.
To all Americans that think Canadian socialized universal healthcare is a solution to all your problems. Canadian here, and I'm going to let you in on my lived experience with the Canadian healthcare system. I'm going to preface this by saying that this isn't the experience of all Canadians, but unfortunately, it is the experience of many. There seems to be a misconception that everything is free here. It isn't. Dental, vision, prescriptions, and all forms of therapy are all paid for out of pocket unless you have some form of health insurance. We also pay a crazy amount in taxes. Canada has a population of 38 million people, which is roughly the size of California, and 1 in 5 people don't have access to a family doctor, which is roughly 6 million people.
Can you imagine 1 in 5 people live in a place where they don't have access to a family doctor?
Yeah.
Here we go.
And it's not because they can't afford it. It's because available doctors simply do not exist. And you can't just walk into a clinic and ask for a doctor. They all have signs up that say not accepting new patients.
And she's showing a sign of the new no.
Instead, you need to contact the government to be placed on a wait list. And in my town, you could be waiting at least 5 years. And if you're
So there's a doctor in your town, but there's a 5-year wait list to see the doctor in your town.
lucky enough to finally land a doctor, but that doctor is awful, which in a lot of cases they are, too bad. You get what you get. We do not have the luxury of choice here. Due to the extreme lack of family doctors, our emergency departments are extremely clogged. You could be waiting up to 20 hours or more to receive care. Because of the wait times in the emergency department, people are losing their lives. And unfortunately, this is one of the latest heartbreaking stories.
And she's showing a news headline.
If you ever need an
of
ambulance,
somebody who died.
good luck, because we have a shortage.
She's showing another sign of another.
And sometimes there's not a single ambulance available at all for my entire province of 1 million people.
And she's showing another sign.
Have cancer or need specialists for other medical conditions? Good luck.
Another sign. Another
Need
news
blood
headline.
work? Well, that's too bad because there are 0 appointments available. Need a psychiatrist? Well, that's too bad because there's a 2-year wait list. But hey, if you want medical...
Imagine you're suicidal and you want to see us, and you think you, and
Yeah.
somebody says, trying to get you an appointment with a psychiatrist because you're suicidal. And by all these pauses, she's showing newspaper headlines of people dying in an emergency, literally
And
dying
we
in
can post the
emergency
link
rooms.
to this. We'll post the link to this on your website.
Yeah, dying in waiting rooms, waiting for an ambulance.
assistance in unaliving yourself, the government is more than willing to facilitate that and will even suggest it.
But by the way, she said unaliving yourself. In other words, if you want
That's
to,
the new politically correct term is unalive yourself.
I'm gonna back that up so you can hear. Okay, here we go.
Need a psychiatrist? Well, that's too bad because there's a 2-year wait list. But hey, if you want medical assistance in unaliving yourself, the government is more than willing to facilitate that and will even suggest it.
And she's showing somebody who
And that really is a testament to how well the system is working, that the government is actually asking us to unalive ourselves. Got to ease the burden on the system somehow, right? And another testament to how well our system works is how many Canadians have to raise money so they can go to the US for healthcare that they cannot receive in Canada.
And another headline.
If socialized medicine doesn't work in a country with 38 million people, how do you expect it to function in a country with 330 million people? I understand your system has its faults, but please stop listening to people like Bernie Sanders and AOC. They're nothing but snake oil salesmen selling a pipe dream. Socialized medicine isn't the answer for your problems. It's too expensive to uphold, and ultimately, it's a failed system.
Now, by the way, do you know why there's a shortage of doctors, not only in Canada, but in places like the United Kingdom?
There's also a shortage of doctors in the United States, and we don't have social health care here yet.
But you know what's even worse in those countries?
Probably because they're not making the salaries that some doctors can make in America.
That's right. The
We
government,
also have a shortage.
absolutely correct. The government caps what those doctors get paid. So, at least here in the US, okay, I'm going to borrow, 180,000 to complete, 8 year, 4 years of college and 4 years of medical school. But, I'll be able to make $300,000 a year. Would you go to college till you were 27 years
Wow.
old, and to find out, oh, we're only let you make $110,000 a year?
Yeah, and it's not just human doctors, by the way. There's a veterinarian shortage in this country as well.
Right. But at least here, the people who elect to do that know that, okay, but I can really make some good money. So yes, I'll
Yeah.
spend 8 years of my life in school, another year
Yeah.
internship, because there's a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow in the UK. And, by the way, the doctors are people are either not going into medical school, or they're going to medical school and then leaving the country, where they're going to other countries like the US, where they can, make a decent salary. So that's so producer Susan, if you could put that link up on the website, I think it
Yeah,
would
absolutely.
it's a great video, because every pause she was showing a headline to
Mhm.
illustrate her point about people dying in waiting rooms, people dying because there's no ambulance to take them to a hospital. Um, it's just a great thing to watch, and unless you can read some of those headlines she was showing, you really can't appreciate some of the things she was talking about. All right, so let's talk about how much money the U.S. needs to
And by the
borrow.
way, it is
Right.
not free healthcare. Your taxes are paying for it.
Right. She mentioned that right up front, that they are paying an ungodly amount of taxes.
Mhm.
And I think I've covered that before. The typical US family pays about 7% of their gross income in taxes. In most European countries, that number is 30%, and that's in addition to a 25% federal sales tax, which is called a VAT, or value added tax. So it's
Mhm.
not free, they pay for it. All right. So U.S. budget deficit this year is projected to come in at 1.6 trillion, meaning we're going to spend 1.6 trillion more than we take in in taxes. Now, I did some math, being an engineer, and said, okay, well, let me figure out how much we have to borrow every month, every hour. So um, so do you know how much we have to borrow every day to fund a $1.6 trillion deficit?
I think it's a billion. I don't know the exact number. I can't do the math in my head.
4.4 billion per
Billion.
day, which works out to $183 million per hour, which works out to $3.1 million per minute. Every minute, we have to borrow $3 million to pay for that. And if you want to break it down to the second, $3 million a minute is $50,000 a second, is what the United States has to borrow to continue funding the deficit that it's operating on. And you know how we borrow that money?
Uh, through other countries and through bonds,
Right.
selling.
We sell interest-bearing treasury bonds. And by the way, the interest alone on the treasury bonds, I think I covered this a couple of months ago. This year, we're probably going to be looking at almost $500 billion just on on interest payments on the money that we borrowed so far. 500 billion in interest. So these numbers I rattled off this is not the money for the interest. This is simply the money we have to borrow. We're borrowing $3 million a minute, or $50,000 per second, to continue to fund the government the way it's currently structured. It blows my mind. All right, read an intro. Here's our science minute. A story came out about how EVs are, number one, extraordinarily more dangerous.
Mhm.
And did I talk last week about why getting hit by an EV is going to cause more damage and more injuries?
I think I don't know if we discussed it last week or not, but it's one because of the weight.
Right. The equation for kinetic energy, if for those of you not engineers, is kinetic energy, which means the energy in an impact is 1/2 mass times velocity squared. Well, a typical EV, if a regular pickup truck weighs 6,000, an EV is going to weigh 9,000. So, and here's an example. If I take two balls of the same size, same velocity, would you rather get hit with a baseball or a tennis ball?
A tennis ball.
If I have two balls of the same size, one's a ping pong ball, the other's a golf ball, so they're both traveling the same speed, they're both the same size, would you rather get hit by the golf ball or the ping pong ball?
Ping pong ball.
Right. So that's where the weight of the vehicle comes in. So when an EV hits you or hits another vehicle, because it weighs 50% more than a standard vehicle, it does a lot more damage. You're more likely to be injured or killed in a collision with an EV. But something else comes up. So, and this comes to if we put that injury and death factor aside, and I think I've said this in the past, I am not opposed to all electric vehicles. I think EVs is a second car. I think EVs make a second car,
Mhm.
particularly if it's a small, around town, go to the grocery store car. I think EVs make a
Commuting
great
back and
second.
forth to work,
Getting,
save some money.
back and forth to the train station. But these giant, pickup trucks and whatnot, or these big Yukons and Suburbans, I just think not only are they dangerous, um, but here's what Toyota has. Toyota has something they call the 1-6-90 rule. Toyota scientists have calculated the amount of raw materials needed to make a long-range electric vehicle could instead be used to make either of the following: either 6 pure plug-in hybrid vehicles or 90 hybrids. And by a plug-in, a plug-in hybrid is a hybrid that you have to plug in, but a pure hybrid, which has got a small engine plus some batteries. Can you imagine with the batteries it would take to make one pickup, you could make 90 gas EV hybrid vehicles. So here's the quote from Toyota. The overall carbon reduction of those 90 hybrid vehicles over their lifetimes is 37 times as much as a single battery EV. Think about that. Even though it's got a small engine that occasionally turns on, turns off, even burning the gas, the overall carbon reduction of those 90 hybrids over their lifetimes is 37 times, the reduction is 37 times as much as a single pure electric EV. It's just stunning. And that's from Toyota. That's not some right wing. That's not from, who are those organizations we talked about in that? That's not from the Prager University or Breitbart or Fox News. That's from Toyota. It just mind blowing.
And
Absolutely.
and we've discussed, this, you said the state of New Jersey, the entire state of New Jersey is a metro area of either New York City or Philadelphia. So a large number of people who live in New Jersey commute 30, 45, 60 minutes to the city, to either city, to New York City or to Philadelphia. EVs are fantastic for that purpose. And those hybrids are great because you have the flexibility of both.
And the nice thing about a hybrid, if you want to go, we've already talked about this, if you want to go cross country in a pure EV, you're only going to go depending on, and we talked about how cold weather reduces their range. So we've already talked about, why pure electric vehicles are less than optimal for cross country. With a hybrid, it's half gas, half electric. You can go, other than stopping for gas occasionally, you can go virtually, nonstop cross country in a hybrid EV. So as even a cross country vehicle, given the fact that they're more environmentally friendly, even though they burn a little gas, I think a hybrid is even a better choice, particularly if you're only going to have one car in the family. So that's where we stand with that. All right, you want to move on to Timo?
Let's do it.
All right. So last week I briefly mentioned why you shouldn't download or use the Temu shopping app on your phone. And again, they even ran a Super Bowl ad, and literally millions of people have downloaded and used the Temu, the discount shopping app. But now, you ever heard of Kim Commando?
No.
Kim Commando is kind of a computer guru. She's actually got a radio show on the weekends. Kim Commando, she's got a nationally syndicated show. Millions of people follow her, and she does reviews and she does all sorts of things. Here's what she said about Temu. She said, and this was on her nationally syndicated show, "Stop before you shop. Seemingly overnight, everyone's talking about Temu. That boasts deals that seem too good to be true, like $17 wireless earbuds, $1 gold necklaces, and $23 wedding dresses. Over 50 million Americans have downloaded Temu since it launched stateside in September of 2022, which was, what, 7 months ago, 8 months ago? After it gained traction with an expensive Super Bowl ad promising to let you, quote, shop like a billionaire. Today, Temu is the most popular shopping app in the US behind Amazon, but most of us know little about the app's origin. So I did some digging, and as it turns out, yes, you probably should be concerned. Here's what you found out. This isn't some fly-by-night operation. Timo is based in Boston, Massachusetts by PDD Holdings, which is traded on the NASDAQ exchange, the NASDAQ Stock Exchange. PDD is headquartered in Shanghai, China. PDD also owns the e-commerce platform Pinduoduo, headquartered in, you guessed it, China. So Timo is a communist China-based app and site. Here's what you need to know before using Timo. First, you're buying goods directly from manufacturers in China and other parts of the world. That's why shipping times are often 12 days or longer. The prices are low because the goods are cheap. The pictures of what you see advertised may not be what you actually get. Timo's Better Business BBB, Better Business Bureau rating is 2.2 out of 5. Reviews at Trustpilot are interesting, with 38% 5-star and 41% giving them a 1-star review. But that's not the worst of it. Temu is downright dangerous. The app is a clever, pervasive digital stalker. As you shop, Temu monitors your activity on other apps, tracks your notifications and locations, and even changes settings on your phone. It gets worse. Temu gains full access to all of your contacts, calendars, and photo albums, plus all your social media accounts, chats, and text. In other words, literally everything on your phone. No shopping app needs this much control, especially one tied to communist China. If you're using Temu, delete the app from your phone ASAP. But wait, there's more. Temu's sister app was removed from Google Play because of malware. Do not buy from this company or their app. And Producer Sue, I know you're pretty savvy when it comes to social media and apps. Any thoughts on that warning about Temu?
Yeah, so I'm sure you probably have a local Facebook marketplace, not even marketplace, but like the free, it's not even for sale. It's just like, hey, I'm cleaning out my closet. I have this stuff for free. Come get it. There's a woman in my neighborhood. She had put out some earrings that she bought from a local mom and pop store. And I'm all about supporting mom and pop stores in your local community. But apparently this local mom and pop shop bought their products from Temu for like $1.79 and then sold it for $15. Now, many women who she was getting rid of the stuff because she had a terrible infection in her ear. They were earrings she bought. And many women who buy, cheap jewelry, it's the nickel that makes your ears turn green or your fingers turn green. She had a terrible infection. So Lord knows what kind of metal was in these earrings that she bought. So mom and pop businesses, don't buy from them either and try to resell it.
Yeah. And by the way, I had Googled Temu just to check up. You know what happened after I Googled Temu?
I'm sure you're getting a whole bunch of pop-up ads now.
I'm getting pop-up ads from Temu. I don't have the app. I just simply Googled them, to learn more about Temu. And now I'm getting pop-up ads on my computer screen from Temu.
Because Alexa's listening to you.
All right. How much time we got?
Yeah, you only have 5 minutes. So let's move on to your taxpayer relief shot.
All right. And for those who don't know what a taxpayer relief shot is, I'll let the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, explain it to you. And here we go.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully you'll save the taxpayers money.
Anyway, we got some more. We got another sheriff, but we don't have time to play him. So anyway, and you can't see the video, but let me tell you what happened. So this guy comes into the smoke shop with it and starts a fight with the shop employee. The shop employee tries to get away from him, and the smoke shop is in a shopping plaza that has one of these walk-in urgent care centers. So the store employee goes outside, he's been hit, he's bleeding, and he's trying to get away from this guy with the stick and to go to the ER. The guy follows him out and continues to beat him. Well, guess what? The store employee had a gun in a concealed carry all the time, was being hit by the stick and didn't use it until this guy kind of pushed his luck too far. So here's what happens with this guy.
And a man who walked in and attacked him.
KPRC2's Candace Burns joining us from the outside of the store on West FM 1960, where investigators have just given an update on what happened.
An active scene behind me. Harris County investigators have blocked off this entire parking lot. No cars have been allowed to come in or go out since they've been here for hours investigating. We know that there was an altercation at a smoke shop here, that brick building in the back. A suspect came in and we are told argued with an employee at that smoke shop. That employee was attacked once in the smoke shop, again in the parking lot, and a third time inside that emergency center. This is the aftermath of a violent scene that played out in the shopping center parking lot at the corner of Cypress Creek Parkway and FM 1960. Investigators say it happened around 5 p.m.
Upon their arrival, they located a single male who had been shot multiple times. That male was transported to an area hospital where he's pronounced deceased.
According to Harris County deputies, it started as an altercation inside the smoke shop.
Our investigation indicates that this male that was shot had entered a smoke shop here at the location and began attacking the employee.
Investigators say the employee tried to run and was attacked a second time in the parking lot.
At this point, the employee produced a handgun and shot this male multiple times.
But investigators say the attack continued.
Oh, wait. So I want to make sure you get this. So he shot so first the guy begins attacking him in the store. He leaves. So the guy follows him in the parking lot. And finally, as he's attacking him a second time, the store clerk shoots him twice, but that's not enough. The guy with the stick says, "Oh, I don't care that you shot me." And here we go.
Speaking with investigators right now, we don't anticipate any kind of charges at this point. Once the case is complete,
Well, hang on.
that's where that male collapsed. He was treated by the times. The employee then retreated inside the emergency room where this male followed him in, continued to come after him, and our victim shot this male at least 2 more times inside the ER.
Now, I'll pause it right there. So you're the guy with the stick, and the guy finally shoots you twice, and then goes into the ER to be treated he's bleeding. Would you have followed him into the urgent care center after he's already shot you twice?
No.
So that's our taxpayer relief shot. Guy with a stick just doesn't know when to quit. And as the chief detective says here, no charges will be fired. Well, duh. And so anyway, you think? I mean, if they'd filed charges, obviously, it would have been absurd. That would have been the stupidest thing I've heard all week. But yeah, guy with a stick, you get shot twice. And you can't take a hint. You follow the guy with the gun into the ER, or into the urgent care, and you keep beating him, and he finally turns around and says, "That's it. Shoot you twice more." All right.
Yeah.
So you think that's a good taxpayer relief shot?
Yeah, that was certainly an interesting one, I think.
All right. Anyway, we're running out of time, so I want to thank all of you who listen to the podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your busy day to listen to me ramble on about things I find of interest and importance. If you want to see some materials and story links you heard me talk about today, producer Susan's going to put them up on the website, which you can find. The Jerzee Joe website is jerzeejoe.com, and Jerzee is J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, J-E-R-Z-E-E. If you want to send me an email with any questions, by the way, I got a bunch of interesting comments and complimentary comments. My email is simply joe@jerzeejoe.com. Just remember to spell Jersey with an R and a Z and 2 E's. Other than that, I've got nothing else. Producer Susan, anything
No,
you
I
want to
think New Jersey primaries are coming up. What, next week? Next Tuesday? Or the
I
following Tuesday?
got my ballots in the mail, and I'm ready to start doing my research on our judges and prosecutors. So
And as
absolutely.
we know, these primaries are very important, even though it's not glamorous like a presidential election.
If you want to keep thugs off the street, vote. Make sure you be careful who you vote for judges and prosecutors.
Yep.
All right. Talk to you next week, producer Sue. Take
Have a
care.
good week.
You do.